We are joined in conversation today by Simon Geddis. Simon is the head of solution advisory at SAP in the UK. And Simon is for me is a very special guest. I've recruited for Simon both as an internal recruiter at SAP and also externally. And so Simon's without doubt one of my favorite people in pre-sales. Generally said, he exemplifies the kind of the pre-sales traits of being of having kind of real gravitas, but at the same time being super approachable. He's a great hiring manager. I've seen him do some really impressive things in the past, so I'm sure we'll start to go into depth on those a bit later. So thanks for coming on, Simon.
Oh, thanks for having me. I think I've just got my CV intro sorted there. Thanks, John.
No problem. It would be good, first of all, to start off just setting the scenes a bit in terms of the experience you have as a hiring manager in your position with SAP. So could you just walk us through kind of the scope of your position and how much hiring you've done in the past and what sort of hiring it's been?
Yeah, sure. So, as you alluded to, right, so I'm the head of solution advisory for the UK for SAP. So it's a team of around about 100 people. We cover pretty much the entire portfolio that SAP has. So that's a lot of products, a lot of solutions. But
Yeah.
we also have a team of specialized architects. So their job is to be either business focused or technical focused, working with the customer in terms of that full kind of buying cycle, the landscape, the business processes, as well as the actual solutions that then fit within whatever we put forward. I've been running the team now for 7 years. I've been a manager inside SAP for 12. I've lost count of the amount of people that I've interviewed over the years, but I've probably recruited 20 to 25 people. Some who have joined and moved to different things. Others that have stayed and really kind of enjoyed their experience, and some who, quite honestly, have gone on to bigger and better things within SAP and are I sort of dotted line report into now rather than them reporting into me.
Well, that's always a good sign. In terms of pre-sales, what do you love about pre-sales?
Do you know, so it's the second time this week I've had that question, right? I did a session internally for one of the teams to introduce pre-sales and kind of myself and my role. I've always been really interested in how things work, kind of solving problems. If you give me sort of 10 minutes in any kind of lunch break, if they still exist, right? There'll be a quiz or something that I'm doing just to try and kind of get the cogs working in a different way. That's why I got into pre-sales. It gave me the ability to talk to customers, to understand their business challenges, their problems, knowing that I had a set of solutions that I could use, and hopefully, they would help sort of meet that requirement. Doing that in and of itself is really rewarding. And I think I said to the team yesterday when I spoke to them, you get to meet lots of different people, lots of different businesses, lots of different companies. I mean, SAP operates, well over 100 countries. Excuse me, pretty much every industry under the sun, right? And right across the sort of back office and front office. So there's something really nice about walking down a high street or going into a shop, whatever it might be, going into your bank, knowing that you've been involved in helping that business, hopefully for the better, obviously. And you see these announcements, you see things going on in the press or in the news, whatever it might be, and you think, hey, we've had a part to play in helping solve that problem. That's quite rewarding. But if I'm honest, it just feeds my inner geek.
Good. Um, so it's a kind of a combination. So I've got here kind of variety,
Yeah,
problem solving, making a tangible difference, being customer facing, and feeding the inner geek.
100%.
Yeah.
And if I look at them through the lens as a leader of pre-sales, I've been very lucky. And I know you and I spoke about this over the years. We've got a very good program at SAP where we bring young early talent in, either through university as part of a 12-month internship or through our early talent hiring academy program. Um, Being able to work with all talent, but that early talent and help shape their career and shape their thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, that it doesn't get much more rewarding than that. If I get to spend my time coaching somebody to help them understand how they can, find a career path or find a way to enjoy what they do from a work perspective, that's again super rewarding.
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, I haven't been involved when I was at SAP. I was involved with the Sales Academy just as it was being launched, the first two kind of cycles, and it was such a rewarding experience. Um, it feels a bit like I don't know, kind of Dragon's Den or something, but but at the same time, it's such a rewarding experience because the individuals were so keen and so enthusiastic and so happy. Those that got through, and the
Yeah.
hiring managers just really enjoyed the whole process as well. You could just tell that everybody that went to kind of work that day kind of went home with stuff to tell their families about and kind of really enjoyed the whole experience. And I imagine that kind of follows on through once they join the organization as well.
100%. It goes back to that piece on variety, right? And we'll talk about it no doubt during the interview. There are times when somebody who's not got all the experience or not got all the background will ask a question, and you kind of start to answer it. You catch yourself and you go, actually, I'm about to give them an answer that no longer makes sense. That kind of classic. We
Yeah,
do it that way because we've always done it that way, and it needs that almost naivety in a way where they haven't been involved in a process or they haven't been involved in a situation for them to ask the question to make you, as a leader, think, yeah, there's maybe a better way of doing this.
yeah,
And I'm not ashamed to say I've stolen many a good idea that's come from people who haven't got, a year's experience, let alone the 20 odd years that I've got or my team have got.
yeah, yeah. And actually, now you say that, it's especially relevant for an organization like SAP because traditionally you've hired a lot of really senior people because there's so much kind of complexity that it takes years to gain that. But if you can offset that with the kind of youthful enthusiasm and seeing everything with kind of fresh eyes, it's a great combination, no?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. People talk about diversity, and I'll be careful here, right? But I think actually diversity in terms of tenure and
Mm,
experience is also something that we don't always look at.
yeah,
And I think you want the reverse mentoring to happen as much as the mentoring. You want different groups to come together and challenge each other. So yeah, I think it's helped us to build a much stronger team than if we just went and hired, you know, everybody that came to the business had 15 years experience.
yeah. Good, good, good. Okay, so having worked with you, one of the things that I often so when I work with other customers, I talk about the best things that my other customers do in that case. And one of the things
Yeah,
I don't mention your name, but one of the things I mention from you is how good you are at sparking up a relationship with candidates, and they could be candidates that are in process at the moment, or candidates that you're interested in maintaining a relationship towards the future. And I'm going to use a football analogy, and I know that I should never use a football analogy because everyone hates them, and I can't stop using them. That I remember an interview with Steven Gerrard, and he on his wall he has a letter from Jose Mourinho, who was trying to basically recruit him, and he sends him a letter. And I think that that's an example. I'm not saying that hiring managers should be sending letters, but that kind of tailored individual approach, I think, can work wonders. So could you walk us through kind of how you do that and what advice you would have for other hiring managers looking to to get that kind of personal connection with individuals?
yeah. So I think so. It starts with having the right recruiter, right? And you and I have known each other for a very long time, so that really helps because it means you understand the kind of the almost like the raw materials of what we're looking to work with, right? From when we're looking to go into recruitment and hire. I like to think of with pre-sales, if we can't have conversations with people, if we can't build relationships, it makes it very difficult for us to do our jobs. Now, in a sales cycle or in a customer engagement, you've got power, if you like. You've got the product,
Yeah,
you've got the knowledge. The customer doesn't always know what the product does, or they don't even know how to solve the problem, so they're looking for guidance. I think there's a similar thing comes into it in the hiring process. You've got the pre-sale skills.
mhm,
You've got the ability to communicate. You're looking for somebody that you can talk to and have a conversation with, who you can build the ability is to share ideas and have a conversation. As well as I do, right? Quite often you'll say, "How was that first session?" And it's a conversation. I sometimes have to stop myself when I'm interviewing that first time round and say to people, "By the way, don't panic. I know we've been talking about football or the weather or our kids or something for the last 20 minutes, but that's okay.
mhm.
I want to get to know the person as a human before I get to know them as a pre-sale specialist or as a product expert or whatever it might be. Because I found over the years, and I'll borrow a football analogy or football story if you like.
Let's do it.
you're putting a team together, right? I
Yeah.
don't need 11 strikers on my pitch.
Hmm.
I don't need 11 goalkeepers on my pitch. I need that blend. But the team works well when you know they can interact together. So sometimes when you're hiring, you're not looking necessarily for the skill set. You're not looking for somebody that knows the finance solution or the HR solution. You're looking for somebody that will bring value to the dynamic within the team
Yeah.
that can slot into the team. I might, cause some. I think if Don was here, he'd either agree or disagree. I'm not sure which, right? Don Carmichael, but you can teach pre-sales.
Yeah.
I can teach almost anybody how to demo a product. I mean, at the end of the day, we do it all day long. We show our children how to do their homework, or, I show my mother how to use her phone, right? Whatever, or to set the skybox up or something like that, right? So we do pre-sales all day long,
Yeah.
but you want to get to know the person, the human being, because I think, and again, I think Don's touched on this in one of the previous fireside chats, Hireside chats that you've done, right? Is it's tiring if you're not who you are.
Mm.
If you can't be your authentic self when you go to work, it's tiring. So I want to get to know that authentic person. I think when you do that, it builds up such a strong relationship because it puts the candidate at ease.
Yeah.
Also, I've interviewed alongside pre-sales. I've interviewed hundreds, maybe not hundreds, but quite a few salespeople
Yeah.
where I've sat in on their interview as either part of a panel or just because the sales manager wanted me to have a perspective on it. I never look at the CV.
Yeah.
And I've never seen a salesperson tell me on their CV that they missed their target ever. Right? There's always achieved 110%, 120%, went to club, whatever it might be. So that part of a CV, and I think it's the same with pre-sales as well. Kind of, yes, it's interesting, but actually, I want to know the person.
Yeah.
I want to know what they're going to bring. I want to understand what their mindset is to the role. More importantly, I want them to understand who I am and who we are as a team in a business because it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
I've sat through way too many interview interrogations, and that doesn't work.
Do you know what? You've struck on something that's really interesting there that I've not thought about before, which is obviously you want to look at certain tangible factors like went to President's Club or was promoted or big. That's all good as they're indicators. The past predicts the future. But there's the danger then that you go for a bit of confirmation bias in the interview. Like you decide even before you're speaking with the person that they're great and you don't question those assumptions. So maybe that's just good practice is to somehow put that out of your head for a moment, especially in those first conversations,
Yeah,
and kind of test assumptions to check they really would be a good fit for your organization as well.
100%. I mean, there's the danger of bias through that as well. You talk to somebody who supports the same football team, or they have the same sort of background as you. They went to the same university or something. They come from the same town, whatever it might be. So you've got to be slightly careful. But I think you're right. I think if you look at, I'll give you a good example. We touched on early talent a minute ago. A few years ago, I was sitting in one of the workshop days that we do when we bring the academy candidates in, and out of whatever reason, I just looked at there was four people. I looked at the CVs and I wrote a number at the top, 1 to 4. So I ordered them, put them in an envelope, put it at the side, and I said to the person that was running the workshop with me, I said, based on what I've read, that's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah.
I was completely wrong. I won't say which one it was, and hopefully they won't listen to this and think, it was me. I had them scored third because their experience and their CV, if you were to sort of rank it, put them at a level below two other people in the room
Yeah.
during the day, they were unbelievable
Yeah.
because they were just themselves.
Yeah.
They had a presence about them, they had a way about them. They were funny
Yeah.
as much as they were knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And that made up for the fact that their CV didn't make it look like they were as strong. So they hadn't been working at a big four for a year, or they hadn't done a specific degree that other people had, or whatever. But as a package, when you took it away from what it said on paper, they were the best candidate by a country mile.
Yeah. So good. Interesting. And I think this is a good segue to the next question I have for you. Before we do that, just a couple of things that you've always done that I've always really liked is you've always struck up a text conversation or a WhatsApp conversation with candidates, and I think that's
Yeah,
great best practice. I think that especially because interview processes sometimes can take a bit longer than we would like, and for a candidate, it's a real emotional kind of roller coaster. And just having the ultimate hiring manager saying, "Look, you're going to go through some interviews now. Give us a shout if you need anything." I just think that that kind of bit just to help. I don't know. People feel really they're really appreciative of that, so that's good. And then the
Yeah.
other thing was the original. The you said fireside chats before was I think it was with you that we started doing the fireside chats. So the conversation with another solution consultant or something kind of just before the offer stage, so that the individual could really take the time to ask all the questions they had and that they perhaps wouldn't ask the hiring manager. And I think both of them really help with engagement and ultimately help get to more accepted offers and kind of positive outcomes.
Listen, I mean, so I think it's really important that when a candidate is making that decision of, it's an emotional thing, right? They're either, they may be unfortunately out of work and looking for work. 9 times out of 10, they're coming from within an existing organization. So there's an emotional journey they have to go on. That means they're going to have questions. They're going to have moments when they're not sure, or there's something's going to spark in their mind 3, 4 days after you speak. I want them to text me. I don't need them to put a formal conversation in to say, can we have half an hour on the phone?
Yeah,
Because that's not how I run my team, right? My team will text me. I mean, it used to be easy. We text. Now we text, we WhatsApp, we Teams message. There's lots of different ways we can. We don't Snapchat, thankfully, but apart from that, we do, different mediums. So I think that's important. Um, I think as well, and I like what that you touched on there. Players, again, using football analogy, right? Players talk to players, and quite often a player will join a team because the other players have said, "Hey, you'll like it here. You'll fit in.
yeah,
We like your style of play. It'll work." Um, I also, I think the best validation when I'm hiring somebody comes from their peers that they're going to be working with.
yeah,
If they say to me, "Hey, I really like that person. I know we can work together," that takes a lot of pressure off me then to make that dynamic work. To think, how do I fit them in? I've already got a built-in buddy system. It's
yeah,
going to work. So I think, and I think it puts the candidate at ease and makes that emotional side of the decision-making process for them that much easier as well.
yeah, completely, completely. And just one additional thing is I think that for individuals, looking at the caliber of the team, and if it's assuming it's an impressive team, I know they are SAP, that really helps as well. It's like, wow, these guys know their stuff. So that's
Yeah,
good.
absolutely.
Good. Okay. And then in terms of when you look to hire, what do you look for? What kind of abilities and characteristics do you think make up a great pre-sales consultant?
You've heard me say this before, right? There used to be that kind of, I used to call it the triangle. I think realistically it's a Venn diagram, right? You've got product or solution area knowledge, right? Finance expertise, HR expertise. You've got their industry knowledge, and you've got the soft skills, the pre-sale soft skills, right? That for me remains. I think you've heard me say this 100 times. If you've got all three of those qualities, you're already in the job. You're already working for us, right? So can I find somebody that's got two? Some of the best pre-sales I've hired over the years, or I've been involved in, or we've brought in, are who have come from industry. They've never done pre-sales before. They were a customer, but they've seen how we work. They've been excited by it, and they've opted to move from the customer side to the vendor side, right? So they don't have that part, those pre-sale skills. Others, and again, especially with the early talent, you can see a lot of the raw pre-sale skills within them. The ability to have a conversation, ask open-ended questions, do basic discovery, that kind of thing. But they don't know the products or the industry, so you can build on it. I don't think that's changed over the years. But as the software technology space has changed, right? And again, I've got, I didn't have grey. In fact, I didn't have a beard. I didn't have grey in my beard when I started, right? So when I first started doing pre-sales, we didn't have a mobile version of things. It was just a PC. Then we went to mobile. Then we went to in-memory computing. Obviously, we've got cloud, and now we're looking at artificial intelligence. So there's been a lot of change, but for me, those three fundamentals remain. And I think when you add into that, the two things which I'm always looking for are adaptability,
Yeah,
because we are in a very changing world, and the speed of change in organization is quick. That happens a lot more in a big organization, I think, than a small organization.
mm, yeah,
Because we just move around, right? We have to change our structures, change our orgs. Um, Shareholders come into play and all those kind of things, right? So you need to have that adaptability. Um, the most important thing, and somebody somewhere made a fortune by saying growth mindset once, and it became a thing, right? Inquisitive. It's dead simple,
yeah,
right? Simple English, simple language. Be inquisitive.
yeah,
Um, the best pre-sales people I see are the ones who are willing to kind of just keep on top of things, keep learning about things, not necessarily from a knowledge certification perspective, but they'll say, "Hey, I've heard about this. What does that mean?" They'll ask their peers, about what are you doing over there? What's happening in your world? They can go into customers and have a conversation because if it's a retailer, they've read the grocer, they've immersed themselves. So that inquisitive nature is super super crucial. As I say, the smarter people than me call it growth mindset these days.
Good stuff. Okay, so we've got adaptability and that kind of intrinsic inquisitiveness, kind of curiosity.
Yeah, and if you've got those, like I say, we can teach everything else. I mean, pre-sales is an art. It's a changing art, but you can teach it as long as you've got the ability to learn and you're willing to be flexible in how things operate and understand that there is change constantly within the tech world. Then we can make you a rock star.
Yeah, okay, good. And you said, at SAP and at all large organizations, there's a lot of change, seeing that adaptability. If you look at your experience hiring people from smaller organizations into SAP, what advice would you give to hiring managers at big organizations looking at, for example, people from smaller organizations, or indeed to individuals at perhaps a smaller point vendor considering moving to SAP? Like, what do you see as the big differences, and where can it not work in terms of moving from one to another?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I guess SAP over the years has made a lot of acquisitions.
Hmm.
So in some respects, where we've grown our team and we've hired internally,
Yeah.
you could argue we've done small, well, to large, right?
Yeah.
Or less large to large. I'll maybe put it that way so I don't offend all my colleagues.
Everything's relative, no?
Yeah, exactly, right. Um, when you're at a big corporate, and I think, SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, you have the same challenges. You have the same sort of problems, if you like. The politics can be the same, or the speed at which to get things done because of the stakeholders and everything else that are required. It can be less agile than if you're at a small vendor.
Yeah.
So when you're looking to bring someone, when I'm looking to bring somebody in who's maybe coming from that small vendor side, I'm making sure during that first conversation they understand that there might be frustration.
Yeah.
I used to speak to one person and I got this thing signed off. Now I've got to speak to five. It used to be a conversation. Now it's a business case or a presentation. And again, that comes back to that adaptability piece, right? They need to be comfortable that it might be more complicated. The other thing is, though, when you, and having been at a small vendor myself before I was acquired through into the SAP family, you wear many hats. I used to do pre-sales with a customer, and because we built a relationship, we would then go and deliver the software training in person to the customer because we knew what they were looking for. So we could tailor the training material and the conversation based on their need. That real personal service, it's something that everyone's trying to get better at in the cloud world, especially because it's, customer choice is easier, shall we say. It's easier to move around. So again, helping somebody understand that, you might wear fewer hats, but the size of the organization means you'll still get variety, just in maybe a slightly different way.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people like and welcome that. I used to love Monday morning going, getting in the car, driving to do a demonstration to a retailer, and then maybe on a Wednesday or Thursday or something, I could be doing a demonstration or an RFP for a public sector organization, right? So there's variety there. So you'll get variety in what you do. It's just different. The one thing I think which is super crucial, and if I'm sitting here today listening to this, and I'm at maybe a smaller company, 150 employees, something like that, you guys are doing really cool stuff that we could benefit from.
Yeah.
Because we're such a big organization, you can sometimes get, we do these things the same way. And I went back, touched on it earlier with the early talent, and I think it's the same from the small vendor space.
Yeah.
Just because we have practice doesn't mean it's always going to be best practice.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of value you can bring because you probably have the ability to be more agile, be more reactive to, the tools that we have within the pre-sale space. I can't just go out and say we're going to try this tool and adopt it because I've got regional global considerations. Whereas if I'm in a much smaller vendor, it might be a bit easier to bring in some of those tools. So there's a lot of benefit and value that we can get hiring managers can get from looking outside the, shall we say, kind of the peer organizations and looking and casting the net a little bit wider.
Okay, that's great. And yeah, and it's not lost on me that you made a quick pitch there to anybody listening from a small event.
Hopefully you have noticed that.
Brilliant. I love it. So, okay, that's good. And then in terms of your experience as a leader at a large vendor, um, do you have any advice around the complexities of hiring? So for a leader, for example, from a smaller vendor who might be trying to say, a large vendor like SAP, around getting headcount, moving things forwards, all that sort of stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, so I'll maybe dispel a myth here, right? Big organizations don't have headcount any easier than small organizations.
Right.
If we have headcount change, for whatever reason, and kind of, I think throughout my tenure as a manager, I'd like to think most, not all, I'll be honest, but most of those people that have moved on because we've worked with them to help them develop themselves into a different role or as part of their personal journey, right, through SAP. Um, and that's one of the beauties of being at a big organization, right? There is lots of different roles and lots of different pathways you can take. The business case for backfill or the business case for incremental headcount is just as challenging in a large organization like SAP with 110,000 employees as it might be with a small organization with 100 employees. You still need a business case. It still needs to be strong. You still need to be clear on what you're looking to achieve and how you're looking to do that. One thing I've always said to my team, and if any of them listen to this, any of the managers that work for me listen to this, they'll know, and they're probably like, "Yeah, he does." You have to be on top of your KPIs.
Yeah.
You can only negotiate for headcount from a position of strength.
Yeah.
So, if we're not doing the right levels of deal review, deal qualification, training, enablement, and we're behind in those kind of KPIs, it's very difficult to justify then asking the business to make an investment in additional headcount.
Yeah.
If you can be on top of that and you can demonstrate the need is clear and clean, just like we do with customers, then you can generally get the business case approved or get the headcount approved. Getting headcount in SAP or any large organization is just like doing a deal with a customer.
Yeah.
You have to go through your steps, do your due diligence, do your discovery, and put your proposition forward.
Yeah. And I imagine it's multi-stakeholder at SAP as well. In the sense, it's harder than large organizations because you've got more people to convince and that bit more complexity above.
It can be. It can be. I think that comes into its own more during the hiring process,
Right.
rather than so once you get the headcount. I mean, typically there's one or two, layers maybe you've got to go through to get the sign off.
Yeah.
But then as you start to go through the hiring process, you do find then that, so for example, with me, I've got my manager who wants to be aware if I'm hiring into my directly underneath me in the team. But then there's also my regional leader, if you like, from the business perspective, who will say, "Hey, do you need me involved? How can I help?"
Yeah.
We live in a matrix organization, so there are many stakeholders to bring in, and I think that's super important. It's not important for me. I'd argue you could argue it is. It's important for the candidate you bring in.
Yeah.
Because you want everyone around them to be first of all to know them. So when they first come through the doors or the virtual doors, right, as we have more of now, and they go on course, they already know the people that they're talking to, and it's a much more welcoming environment for them than if they're kind of having to go, well, who does this person, where do they report to? If you've already won them over to some extent, or they've won you over, then it makes life much easier during that initial kind of period.
Yeah. Okay, good stuff. That's really interesting. Okay, and as a final question, so in the time that we've known each other, you've gone from being a first line right up to the head of the UK. How have you found that, and what advice would you give to a hiring manager? Because I could just imagine that the moment that you lose control in terms of this is maybe just me, but the moment that you feel like you're not in control every like you've got to let go a little bit and trust people and so on. So what's that balance like between kind of having structure, giving guidance, leaving it to their intuition? How have you managed that? What advice would you give?
I think for anybody who steps up into so when you become a manager of managers,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's hiring or not, you have to have trust. Um, I think there's two things I always try and do is make sure that the manager and I are aligned. Because quite often, and I think this is sometimes overlooked. Sometimes in business, we can fall into the trap of saying, John's got a new role, John's skill set is X, Y, and Z, therefore we need to go and get another job, right? And that's okay, and sometimes that's completely valid. Other times you think, well, hang on a second, actually, is that what we really need? So I think as the leader for that part of the business, it's my job to make sure we're evaluating who and what we're looking for from the candidate that comes in.
Yeah.
And then you've got to trust the manager to go and execute on that. So I think it is a bit uncomfortable at times. It does feel a bit, well, what's going on? I have a way around that, which is I always ask to meet the candidate prior to any offer going out. That's not to vet the candidate. And I'm always very clear, especially with the candidate when I sit down with them. If the manager comes to me and says, I've interviewed 15 people or 5 people, or I've seen 100 CVs, I want John, I trust that John's the right person.
Yeah.
What I want to do then is have a conversation with John and say, hey, welcome to if you're joining, welcome to the team.
Yeah.
Let's have a conversation. I'd like to get to know you a bit, but I want them to get to know me because I don't want to be their boss's boss who they've never met. I want them to be someone that says, hey, I'm bought into making you successful. So what are you looking for from your career? How can I help you join SAP and then be amazing?
Yeah.
And that's the leader's job in the hiring process when you're not the direct hiring manager.
Yeah, that's great. So trust, being aligned, and then getting to know the individuals at the end, but for their benefit more than your own, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Which I think ties the whole conversation up perfectly because we started off talking around engaging candidates, and a lot of that seems to be around them feeling comfortable through just a lot of communication. Just it's pretty simple. So I think that's a really good kind of overall message. So that's great. Simon, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add? Anything else you wanted to ask? Anything you wanted to bring into the conversation that I haven't done?
No, I think I think we overcomplicate things when we come to hiring, right? The best interviews I've had and the best hiring I've ever done are really simple. You know this, right? It's let's have a phone conversation, one on one. Let's get to know each other. Let's see if we both feel like there's something there we should explore. If that's the case, let's set a really simple, clear, panel interview because I want, my peers to look at it. I've got obviously stakeholders internal that I've got to bring on board. I want somebody potentially from the team to sit in there as well. Let's go through that. Let's not make that overcomplicated, right? We don't need to explore the empathy of everything. We're looking for those key characteristics. If that's the case, and we at that point can make a decision, let's go ahead and make the decision and let's bring that person in. I don't want to sit through 5 interviews with the same person, and I don't want to put people through 5 interviews. I don't think you get any value from that, and I think we can be guilty sometimes of overcomplicating the hiring process just because, like everything else, right? It's all we've got to do these steps in these situations. No, keep it simple. Build trust with a candidate. You're much more likely to get the right outcome.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the time. This has been a really, really enjoyable conversation, and we've unearthed lots of things that I think will be really beneficial to everyone listening. So thank you, Simon.
No problem. Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Cheers.